Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the Sikh Youth Show, each and every Wednesday on Sikh Channel at 9 p.m. Today we have a very important guest with us. But before I introduce my guest, let me just tell you a little bit of background on why we brought this special guest on today and the importance of it for you, the Sad Sangat. Because this lady was on the ground at the grassroots when the epidemic of Sikh girls were targeted in the 80s and 90s. She saw, and she was a eyewitness, first-hand accounts of the young Sikh females who were put into the system, and she saw how bad it was for them, the trauma they went through, how they were exploited and trafficked around the UK. Now, I'm going to introduce my guest, Inderveer Kaur. Welcome to the show. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Now, she saw firsthand exactly what was going on at the time. Now, as an organisation, and you've seen some of the work we've been doing, you know, it's gone to mainstream, it's all over the channels, it's all over social media. We have tried to put out the historical epidemic on the targeting, religiously aggravated targeting of Sikh girls and Sikh females and the exploitation they suffered throughout history. Now, over the last 5 decades, we've produced reports to show how bad it's gone. It's gone back 5 decades. Now, Inderveer Kaur was on the ground at the time. She worked in a hostel in West Midlands. So before we continue the show, I just want her to go into how she got the job and, you know, what she saw firsthand from some of the females that were put into that care system.
Yes, sure. Okay, my name is Inderveer Kaur. I believe I was the first warden in one of the Asian hostels which was opened within West Midlands. At that time, it was not a confidential place. It was the people knew where the hostel was. What I found was that it was very easy for girls to say that their parents are very strict, Sikh girls, and they needed help, and the police would get involved, the social services would get involved, and they'll remove the children, the girls, not all very young, but they'll remove the girls, bring them to the hostel. Once they're in the hostel, they lose all the support from the family. They would not be allowed to contact the girls, and then they were absolutely free to be totally exploited. I was very young myself at the time, and I could not understand how could professionals remove the girls, vulnerable girls, and put them at the mainly Pakistani men's disposal for them to use, abuse, and do whatever they wanted to do with them. And often the girls would think that the boyfriends are Sikh because they would have a kada. By the time they realized they are Muslims, it would be too late, and by the time they would be passed on to different men, and it was very much like, and it was something which was very common, was the girls would say at the time when they realized that they were entrapped, would say that they would call them kafir. Kafir means a non-believer. And that's when they realized that it was not a lovey-dovey boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, it was something a lot more serious. Many of those girls talked about being locked up in some sort of flats in some sort of rough areas where different men would come. Some talked about really smelly men, older men, and they just really felt that they could not really, they felt that they were dirty. They could not really go back to their families. Their families felt very bad that they couldn't really manage the girls. What I found very disappointing and quite disturbing as a young woman myself was that when the parents tried to stop the police from removing the children or the social workers, sometimes there would be confrontation between especially the fathers, and they would end up with getting in conflict with the police. And some, at that time, I did not understand the criminal justice system. Later, I did become probation officer, so I understand that maybe they were arrested for obstruct PC or clothes like that. But at the time, I really did not understand that how could a father trying to stop their daughter being removed forcibly from their care. And I understand, again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think my guess is the parents knew that their children, their daughters are being removed and they'll be at these predators' disposal for them to abuse. So it was like a stigma, shame, feeling helpless, not being able to do anything. And some of the mothers, what the girls told me, ended up with the depression and mental health problems. And some of the fathers who were hardworking, law-abiding people, perhaps some of them ended up in with the conflict with the law.
But you're saying like because they tried to address the issue themselves, they ended up with criminal records.
Yes, they tried to manage the sort of like managing the children the best they knew.
Yeah.
And one of the things, because I think lots of their decisions were fear-based. It was not like open-minded decisions. It was fear-based. I think lots of parents felt if they did not arrange their daughters' marriages soon enough, then they would be kind of ruined, and they'll be taken from these people I'm referring to, mainly Pakistani. Not all Pakistanis are like that, but those are the ones who were involved.
The ones who targeted in Sikh girls were majority
Well,
Pakistan.
majority, I wouldn't even say Muslim, I would say Pakistani Muslims.
Sikh,
Because Muslims are like, I've never heard anybody talk about Middle Eastern Muslim or, so it was very much like, I don't want to say every Pakistani person is
No, of course
targeting,
not.
but those who were, I cannot think of any other. I mean, I can say at that time it was 100% the people who were targeting. And what was really upsetting and quite disturbing for me as a young Sikh person was that while they removed the older girls from the family, then the younger girls were, some of them were taken into care because the parents were seen as too strict or not managing. So really, those girls who would have been okay, studying hard, doing well in the family, ended up in the care system where they were absolutely free to be abused by these men.
And these
So
gangs.
these men, these gangs, and there was no protection. I tried very hard at the time to explain to the professionals that perhaps they need to understand the cultural point of view, the religious point of view,
The language even.
the language even, and I think I was seen as nobody. I was a 22-year-old young woman.
But you spotted the signs then, and you highlighted
Absolutely,
it to those.
absolutely, and but I felt that people were behaving as if they knew best.
Okay.
And anybody who tried to sort of explain that the parents did have a viewpoint and their viewpoint was valid, they were caring, committed, ambitious parents who wanted the best for their children. But the authorities are getting in the way of them achieving the best life ambitions for their children. To me, that was quite disturbing. I was thinking, how could it be that the parents cannot really manage their own children? The authorities are getting involved, not to enhance their support, but to cut it off. And then once they were removed from the family care, then I thought it was a duty of care on the so all responsible who had removed them to ensure that those girls were not abused while they were taken away from the security of their home.
They should be more cared for while they're in care. Then there should be more eyes. People should be more vigilant.
They should be more sort of like they should have been more. I think
protected.
They should have been protected. Then I think what was quite upsetting and disturbing was that you could see these men go up and down, and then
so you saw these predators.
And then some of these girls would even take other residents who were not involved in them to begin with, but they did, because if they felt the parents were being strict, they would say, "Oh, I want freedom." And then there was, at that time, there's a lot of feminists at the time, and they saw, oh, these poor girls needed protecting. So they would say they need freedom. what they didn't understand was that freedom was not freedom. That was actually more like worse kind of slavery for them. They were like used as uh, I don't know how to explain, because what the girls said was that they didn't have a choice who they were pushed towards. They didn't have a, basically they lost all their dignity. They didn't think that they were worthy of any respect. They just really felt that they were dirt. They would feel that because the families did not welcome back, as you know, so you could well understand.
So because it was such a, obviously for parents not understanding the issue at the time, the girls were tarnished even more. So the girls were tarnished and took advantage of.
Right, yeah.
And then what happened was the families, because they didn't understand the issue, that the trauma and the scandal that their girls have been caught up in, they obviously shame was,
Yes,
Sharm
yeah,
de
yeah,
Mare, they
yeah, yeah.
didn't accept them back in their homes.
I think it was shame and also feeling of helplessness.
Yeah.
What I saw was not just shame, not कि साडा नक वड़ दिता, साडी बेइज्जती करती. It was really feeling totally helpless.
So they were secondary victims in this.
They were major victims who had not been recognized. Not only the parents, the other siblings,
Yep.
not just girls, boys also.
Yeah.
And some of the boys in the family, maybe they got in like violent offending because they were trying to protect their daughter, the sisters. And otherwise, there would have been somebody that, you know, as you would know, lots of Sikh parents are very ambitious for their children. They would work hard. They would do their best to ensure that their children get the best education, the best lifestyle. But then they would not really want to see their daughters as used. I don't want to say too many bad things, but it's like basically dirt. And their sons becoming criminals, that was nobody's ambition at the time. I remember once a girl came, and I'd never seen somebody so upset in my life before, up until that time. Since then I have. She was beside herself because her father, who was only in his early 40s, died of a heart attack.
While
After,
she was in care.
yeah, no, she wasn't in care. She ran away from home.
Okay.
She was in the hostel, and he begged her. He begged her to come home, saying, "Beta, please kar aaja. Assi tere to bina reh nahi sakde. Please kar aaja." And he was healthy, fine. And then this man actually died of heart attack. And and then I think
So
at
the
that time.
effect it had on the family was very, very traumatic,
And then
obviously.
for many mothers, mental health problem became quite, again, they did not recognize as the mental health problems, so they were really not coping. And basically, these people targeted not because they were sexual predators, but mainly they were like, they were specifically against Kafirs, Sikh girls. So they were not targeted because they were attractive. They were not targeted because they wore short skirts, but mainly because they were Sikhs, and that was really clear.
Why do you think that was?
I think some, again, I'm not.
Because I've obviously we've done research on this, and we've seen that there was a lot of money put up for this in the past, where people, were extorting and trafficking girls for financial exploitation, and that it said on one of those leaflets that there was given up to £10,000 invested. I know it's a very emotional topic, and I can see you're emotional about this. It took, some of the research that we've done into it, they said there was finances put up for this.
I think again, there's a particular type of people who were doing this because they're kind of gangs acting as a quite nasty sort of gangs. They were not ordinary, university going sort of like Muslim men who was like really, doing well in their lives and stuff. But they were particular types because I think I got the impression that they held grudge against Sikhs because had it not been for Sikhs, all of the region would have been Muslims. So they felt, again, that's my understanding, that because they could not really convert people by force, the best way to finish them was through their daughters, like, introduce a disease through the daughters, and then it will spread the whole, it's like cancerous cells. So really, they would
So you're saying it was organised and systematic to target Sikh
absolutely,
females
yeah,
specifically?
yeah, because that hostel was not just for Sikh girls; it was for Asian girls.
Okay.
There were some Muslims also, but the real difference between the residents was the Muslim residents were mainly young females who had been brought as young brides with young children. So those were mainly victims of domestic violence.
Yeah.
They did not have the same issues with the same men, although
Okay.
the men who were
So
going
they
up
had a
and
separate
down,
sort of abuse
you
issue.
know, in those days, I think there's like Datsun and Capris, you know, really like tatty looking maroon colors and those types, you know, sort of, I can even visualize. Um, but they would not sort of like, even some of the Muslim women were quite young and they could have been, you know, like used in the same way as the Sikh girls were, but that didn't seem to be the case. They were they kind of very much like, how should I say this? It was really like, although they're all living in the same environment, but their experiences are very different. They were not targeted in the same way. They were not, again, the issues with the families were not the same. Because I think when the girls, people talk about victims, people talk about sexual grooming, this word was never used before.
It wasn't.
They used to call strict parents, parents having cultural issues.
Is that what they said?
Yeah, parents not moving on with the times. They need to understand the girls need freedom. And I was thinking, this is freedom. This is really taking somebody. And I was thinking,
Breaking
God,
someone's home, putting them in a vulnerable position when the issue may have not been the actual child or the young girl.
no. Or the family, or the
Or the
parents.
family,
The parents are blamed.
and then perpetrators exploiting them
Yeah.
for their personal gains.
And the awful thing was, perpetrators were never even questioned. They were not arrested. Who was arrested? The young brothers who tried to defend their sisters. Who was arrested? The fathers who spoke in a loud voice to the police officer and not showing sufficient respect when they were trying to stop them, or being aggressive towards a social worker. And I often said, why do you just see this as a negative thing? Why don't you see it as the pain from the parents who are trying to do their best they could? Now, I grew up in an environment where there's respect, there's protection. This was alien concept to me, that the children could be removed from their family homes and put in those situations. So for me, it was a proper cultural shock. And I think perhaps, you know, like that really shaped the kind of decisions I made in my life.
Okay.
Really, I mean, now I can see, you know, as a 22-year-old, what I'd seen, the impact that had on my life has been immense. That affected the career I chose, that affected the kind of lifestyle I chose. And at that time, as a 22-year-old, I decided I would never have children in this country. If you cannot raise them with dignity, I could not do it. And that was not a small decision. And in a way, I think that just seeing all that was kind of seeing like trauma. And I think it's kind of, I never thought that it was kind of like a traumatic experience. I'm surprised that I feel upset by it now. I don't think I've ever cried about this before. But I felt sorry for the parents, sorry for the siblings, the girls, and very, very sorry for the girls. And some of those were even taken abroad, and no authorities would take any interest to bring them back. What happened to those? And what happened to, if these girls ever had children, what kind of life would they have? What kind of dignity they would live with? What would what names would they have? So if this is life, what sort of country are we living in, and why is it so accepted? And as far as I knew, these people are called boyfriends. They were not called pedophiles. They were not called perpetrators. They were not called criminals, because they were just normalized. The people who were criminalized were the people who were actually the victims. I need the tissue, please.
No problem. If you could I'm going to ask my gallery if they can get some tissues, as obviously in the read. It's an emotional subject, and it's very a subject that as a community, historically it hurts us and it's very touching. So if the gallery staff could get some tissues, and I'll just elaborate. You know, you've seen firsthand how serious these issues are, how they affect people who were on the ground at the time. You know, the historical report that we've done with the race report, it goes back. It's very important to show how bad it was for the Sikh community. And this epidemic has been silenced, it has been brushed under the carpet, and we can't keep silent about it. We as a community need to raise our voices. So there was justice for those, just like Rotherham had their justice, just like Rochdale had their justice. We as a community need to highlight how bad it was for us and speak more with the likes of Inderveer and others who have been there, who were there on the ground, who can say what they witnessed. And is it,
of course, yeah,
you know,
sure.
what happened at the time, we've spoken a bit about, and it is very emotional, but is it okay to
Of
continue
course,
the
yeah,
interview? Are you
absolutely,
happy
yes,
with that?
yeah, of course.
You know, you've spoken about how many girls would you have seen while you worked at that hostel, like Sikh girls that were targeted or exploited
I would say hundreds
at the time?
at the time, yes, yeah. It was not a very, very big hostel, but there was a quite quick turnover of the different people coming and going. And what's worrying was for me to think that what happens when they don't come back, when they should come back, you know, like um, normal families or ordinary people would like the children to be home, you know, when it's dark, but not coming back until 10, 11, 12. That was worrying, because what were they doing, and sometimes not coming back at all. So when you sort of really think, you know, where are they? They say, well, they're adults, they're not children. So they were not under 16s or 18s, they were girls. But at the same time,
But they were vulnerable.
They were vulnerable, absolutely. Just because somebody turns 18 doesn't really make them, especially when they are brought up in very protective environment, they tend to be trusting. They tend to be trusting, they tend to be quite innocent, quite naive, although some of them are quite streetwise as well. But I don't think many of them thought that what they were putting themselves in. That's what the girls told me. I would not know what was going on through in their minds. I would only know how much, whatever they chose to share. Anybody who spoke on behalf of the parents, or anybody who was not kind of talking down at the parents, was seen as collusive. I was not the, what should I say, forward thinker. I was not seen as a forward thinker, a Sikh woman. I was seen as very conservative. And I was thinking, if forward thinking means push your girls towards these men, I hope and I pray that nobody ever becomes civilized, and I hope people always remain as backward. I was seen as, and somebody said to me, when you go to a university to get place in, you know, for training, don't mention your views, because they would not accept you. So luckily I was not asked those sort of questions, so I never had to say what I thought.
We're coming to the end of the show. Just to finish off, so we've spoken about how did this make you as a person want to make a difference in life? You know, let's just go into that before we end the show. We've got a few minutes left, not long, but what happened, what did you want to do to help make a difference?
I hope that, I mean, what really made me contact you, Deepa, was when I saw that you worked very well with the police officers, and you, I don't remember which episode it was, I haven't watched many, and you challenged, you know, sort of like that, one of those guys, and the police was there with you. And I thought that was brilliant, because as I say, prevention is better than cure. And for this sort of grooming and abuse, there is no cure, because once they are made into trash, they don't regain their dignity back. So I would say that really make sure that, one, people stop denying that problem exists.
Yeah.
people stop saying that the Sikh girls are, people stop denying Sikh girls are targeted.
Because
And
you've seen and witnessed it.
absolutely. And instead of really sort of saying, oh, girls are girls, boys are boys, and really understand that this is a particular type of crime which is which really I think our our country perhaps did not really does not have the usual mechanism, does not have to address those. When people say you should not be addressing these people yourselves, what people don't realize is the usual criminal justice system cannot tackle these people, because men say, I have been a probation officer for many years, they say we make more money in prison than we make outside, and while we are in, we groom others to become Muslims. So if they think that's punishment, forget it.
Yeah. Thank you for taking time out. We've come to the end of the show. Last announcement before we end, we want to thank Inderveer for coming onto the show and telling you, the Sangat, how bad it was at the time. This weekend, the annual Sikh Youth UK Sri Akhand Path Sahib at Guru Nanak Gurdwara Smedik. Aramb is Friday at 9:30 a.m. and then on Sunday the Borg, along with an excellent lineup of a program on the Sunday. We will put the post out on here, and check out our social media for any more other announcements. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning into the Sikh Youth Show. Make sure you share this, get this message out there, and see how bad it was at the time, so others can understand how bad of an epidemic the Sikh females have been in the 80s and 90s, how bad this was for the Sikh community. Thank you for tuning in. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.